welcome back to Dr. U, and I'm your host, Dr. Noah, and today we're going to talk about depression. Real serious problem, it's epidemic. People that are on these, as we'll talk about, SSRIs, these different types of drugs that have an impact on your neurotransmitters in your brain, is just exploding. They've given it now to children, they give it to animals. I mean, it's just kind of crazy, the overuse of this. So we're going to go through what depression is. It's a serious type of mental problem. It can be helped very, very easily with natural type of approaches that we'll be able to provide for you. So first of all, depression is classified in different types of categories in terms of the medical profession. And so poor appetite with weight loss, increased appetite with weight gain, insomnia, hyperactivity, loss of interest and pleasure in unusual activities, decrease in sexual drive, loss of energy, feeling of fatigue, feeling of worthlessness, self-reproach and inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to think or concentrate, reoccurring thoughts of death and suicide. Another criteria is you have to have at least 5 of the following 9 things within a 2-week period: depressed mood on a consistent basis, marked decreased interest or pleasure in all or nearly all activities, sleep disturbances, persistent feelings of guilt or worthlessness, decreased energy and fatigue, impaired concentration, significant weight loss, psychomotor agitation or retardation, and recurrent thoughts of suicide and death. And so suicide is a big problem. I think it's like in the top 5 reasons for deaths in the United States like that. So it's a big problem. It's something that has to be taken seriously. But as we'll be discussing here, the approaches out there are really kind of questionable. And we'll talk about these drugs. Well, the most common type of drugs that are out there are these different, what's called SSRIs. These are selective uptake type of compounds for serotonin, and that seems to be a factor. Part of the problem is that if it really is a serotonin influence like that, the treatment should be used, that is used should react very quickly, but it usually takes about 2 to 4 weeks to really kick in. So there's a real question whether or not we're really getting to the actual cause of the problem. The other problem is that, as we'll talk about, the science just doesn't support it. We'll talk about there's at least 4 studies that I know that look at all the science, and taking these SSRIs doesn't have any other extra benefit than if you take a placebo. So that becomes a real problem. And okay, so what's the big deal about that? Well, we're talking about billions of dollars spent. It's up to $40–50 billion a year. And also there's side effects, and as we'll talk about. So here we have Prozac linked to brain tumors. Well, that's a serious side effect. There's a lawsuit that Paxil, one of the SSRIs or drugs like that, is addictive. So once you're on it, and that's the thing that I say, once you're on these things, has no benefit from the science, has lots of side effects, but to come off it can be very disastrous. SSRI antidepressants linked to breast cancer, that's not good. And in this particular type of study here that was in PLOS One, which is a medical journal, showing that most of the studies, unfortunately, are infocommercials. This was actually most of what this article goes, is that the people that are doing the studies are basically prostitutes for the drug industry, and of course they're going to tweak that. Another study here in Archives of Internal Medicine, SSRI antidepressants increase gastrointestinal bleeding. Antidepressants, and this is the biggest concern here, actually increase suicide risk. As we talked about, the criteria is thinking about death or harming yourself is obviously a very, very alarming and very, very disturbing, and has to be looked at very seriously. Is that these drugs itself actually do that, especially in children. What's another one? FDA studies the risk of antidepressants in youth. Once again, very little science on that. Paxil's in pregnant women. Antidepressant raises heart defects. I mean, that's what I see. Which is kind of almost laughable. Pregnant women can say, well, I saw my OBGYN doctor, and he or she doesn't want me to take herbs because, that's kind of an indication. And then I look on the thing, they're on all these drugs that cause birth defects. So what's that about? Well, of course, they have the drugs that are poisonous, scientifically proven, and when you start using natural, and there's no proof on that, maybe it could be, maybe it's not, there's no science on that. Here are the studies. Sugar pills work as well as antidepressants. Antidepressants proven to work only slightly better than placebo. Studies after studies have shown that these drugs just don't work, and they have all this. Here's antidepressants are showing birth defects, another one. Panic attack depression harms your mind and body, which is bad. Being depressed increases your chances of Alzheimer's, and so we have to take these things seriously. But what do? We go to the drug doctor gives us lots of drugs, and there's no science to support it.